All right, this is Chris, and we are taking a look at questions 8 and 9 from SAT Test 2 here in Section 4. So on question 8, it says, in a video game, each player starts the game with K points and loses 2 points each time a task is not completed. If a player who gains no additional points and fails to complete 100 tasks has a score of 200 points, what is the value of K? All right, so what we want to do here is see if we can come up with an equation, and it's 2 points each time a task is not completed that are lost, right? So keep in mind it loses those 2 points, so that would be reflected with like a minus 2x, and then the starting amount, they start with K, and that part of it is just going to be K of some unknown value. That's what we're trying to solve for. The question here is asking us, what is the value of K? So we're going to have K minus 2x, where x represents the number of times a task is not completed. So let's see. Player who gains no additional points and fails to complete 100 tasks. So they're basically telling us here that we're going to plug in 100 in place of x, and the resulting score would be 200. They have a score of 200. So to solve for K, we're going to do K minus 2 times 100 equals 200, and we're going to add that 200 to the other side, and you'll end up with K equals 400, which is answer choice D. Now let's talk about what to do on a question like this if you didn't know how to set up that equation algebraically. Well, if you end up with 200 points, and the only thing that can happen is that during the game, you can only lose points. You lose 2 points each time a task is not completed. So that means that your starting amount to end up with 200, your starting amount would have to be greater than 200. And you can eliminate answer choices A and B just by using that. So even if you weren't sure of the exact math, you do want to practice the skill set needed in order to put together equations like this, but you could still 50-50 this question by looking at this logically rather than having to set up the algebraic expression. Let's move on to number 9, and here it reads, a worker uses a forklift to move boxes that weigh either 40 pounds or 65 pounds each. Let X be the number of 40-pound boxes and Y be the number of 65-pound boxes. So 40 goes with X, and Y goes with 65. And I'm going to put that over here just as a little side note as I'm reading the question. All right, 40X, 65Y. Got those pairings together. The forklift can carry up to either 45 boxes total or a weight of 2,400 pounds. So they want to know which of the following systems of inequalities represents this relationship. And the most important thing I can emphasize here is that if you take a look at your answer choices, that can oftentimes offer you really effective guidance into how much work you either do or do not have to do to solve a question. In this case, we do not have to find the values for X or Y. A lot of people dive right in and start doing a bunch of complex math, potentially unnecessarily. We just have to figure out what relationships we're going to have in these answers. And so there are two things that we can note here. First of all, we should see a 40x and a 65y somewhere in our correct answer. So here, since we said that the 40 and the 65 go together, I'm going to clean that question up a little bit so we can look back at it. But here, we should see a 40x and a 65y. So we can eliminate answer choice B based on that structure. Now let's look at the inequality part of it. So we have to create this inequality, and we're going to have a system, which basically means more than one inequality in this case. So the systems, plural, of inequalities. Let's check what each one should be. So there's going to be one that has to do with the number of boxes, and there's going to be one that has to do with the number of pounds. So remember, when we're talking pounds, that's where we're going to include those 45 and 65, the 40 and 60 numbers. So here, when you see 40 and 65, when you see 40 and 65, that should be used in an equation that tells you the number of pounds. So here, 2400 should be related to the 40 and the 65y. 40x, 65y. So here, 2400 is just x and y. 2400 is just x and y. We already know it's answer choice A. Now let's take a look and see if we can understand why is it in fact less than or equal to for each of these inequalities. Well, it says here that you have a forklift that can carry up to 45 boxes or up to 2,400 pounds. So when you say up to, that means that that's your maximum amount. It could carry less, right? The forklift, that's its maximum weight amount that it can carry, but it can carry smaller amounts. It just can't carry more than that amount. So that's where we get our less than or equal to inequalities. And remember, when coming up with these amounts, just make sure that you equate the units. So if you want to figure out 2,400, you're talking pounds, you should see your values for pounds being compared to pounds. If you're talking 45, you're talking boxes, so you should see your values for boxes, which is X and Y, the number of 40-pound boxes or the number of 65-pound boxes. But remember, it's still just number of boxes. And then here, your amount in pounds and your weight in pounds for the small and bigger boxes. And that's all we need for question 9. So remember, important to understand how to set up those inequalities, but don't dive in and start solving those. This question doesn't require it. Up next, we'll take a look at questions 10 and 11.